There is a lot of 3D software out there, some geared towards making visual art and assets, some for designing exact mathematically accurate components, and some to just have a bit of fun in. Today, we're going to be exploring all kinds of these software. Well, the free ones. Only the free ones. And to test all of this software fairly, I'll make the same model in all of them. I've been using Blender for years now, so I thought it would be appropriate to start there as a benchmark. Now, you may be asking, well, isn't the Blender one going to come out the best since that's the only software you're used to? Yes. That is why I am not a scientist. Since it's May 4th, do not look at the date, I decided to make Luke Skywalker's green lightsaber. It's simple enough where I'll be able to make it in these modeling programs without much knowledge and experience in them, but still has enough detail to test out the software a bit and be interesting. In Blender, I could have just eyeballed the proportions of everything, but I wanted to get everything right, for at least the first saber, so I imported a reference image of the lightsaber directly into Blender. It was pretty straightforward to model. I just took a cylinder and extended and scaled it up and out to match the shape of the reference image. When I got to these ridge things, I wasn't about to do every single one by hand, so I just did one, duplicated it directly upwards, lined up the bottom of the duplicated one with the top of the original, and went insano style copying and pasting the ridges. After the ridges, I did the two skinny parts that make this lightsaber iconic, and also make this lightsaber difficult to recreate with enough structural stability so it ends up looking weird, and moved on to the emitter. After I finished making the top of the lightsaber, I looked at all of my glorious work, and then realized that this bit looked absolutely awful, and I should be ashamed of myself knowing that, for all future generations, I will be known as the guy that made this weird looking part of this one lightsaber. I put way too many, breaks, or however you want to call it, into this part. I think it was because the reference image I was using wasn't cut out perfectly. It looked unnatural, so I just deleted it and replaced it all with one single face. I'm sorry to all my future generations for that. My bad, to be honest. I got a cube and made it into one of those things at the bottom of Luke's lightsaber. I don't know what they're supposed to be, they just look cool, I guess. I copy and pasted it twice, rotated the copies, then copy and pasted all of those three, and turned the whole thing 180 degrees to make 6 of them that are equally spaced. Well, mostly equally spaced. I didn't feel like doing the math. Also, I don't know how to do the math. Also down at the bottom, I got some edges and shaped them into a rounded off triangle by adding the subsurf modifier. I gave the triangle some depth and beveled all the edges to make it cylindrical. This was the belt ring that goes through one of those unnamed things I just made before. I made the on and off switch that's right below the bit with the ridges. I gave everything a rough metallic texture, put down a shiny floor with some scratches, and made the lightsaber blade. I promise you, this is only going to go downhill from here. This is also where things get interesting. The next program is called 3D Slash. I'd never heard of it until I started looking for programs for this video. Did I choose it because it looked extremely simple to make things in and I didn't want to have to learn a new complicated software? Yes. Yes, I did. Welcome to 3D Slash. No, thank you. Nice to meet you too. No, that's not the correct response for that at all. Let's just get started. Ooh, there's a tutorial. I mean, it seems pretty self-explanatory, except for these symbols. I do not know what most of these symbols mean at all. I found some tools for making curves, which would help with making the base circle, but it was kind of hard to use for making a perfect circle, so I just did it manually. This software is simple. 3D Slash might just be the closest thing to William Osman's dream CAD program that I've seen. There's not much for me to say. If you want to make some 3D pixel art, it's not bad, except for the fact that you cannot choose your own colors. Well, you can, but it's a paywalled feature, so you're limited to 8 colors. None of them are black, which, as you might remember, is a pretty key color in this lightsaber. But you know what they say, freedom is the enemy of creativity, and limitations are its savior, so I had to take some creative liberties with the coloring. I don't think there's any way to copy and paste a section of your model, so I had to painstakingly make 9 of these ridges by hand. I'm just glad I didn't decide to make this bigger than it already is. I made the top skinny bit slightly bigger than the bottom skinny bit, so it looks really stupid. But at this point, I was already placing these blocks for several hours, and I was not about to redo it. Here it is. It's beautiful. I actually do think that it looks nice. And then I had to go ruin it by making this part thicker. I tried to remember that mistake going into the next program. This one's a throwback to my high school days. Tinkercad was the first ever 3D software I used. It's not bad if you want to make something pretty basic in shape. It is bad, though, if you want to move anything. Attempting to move these things to the correct place at the pommel of the saber was nothing short of an absolute nightmare. It turns out that I just had snapping enabled. To be fair, I did check the settings tab to disable snapping, but for some reason the setting isn't in the settings tab. I mean, it's right below it, but Why would I look there? I was about to add another cylinder when I found out that you can automatically bevel the edges of all of these shapes to make them smoother. A pretty nice feature. To get the smaller cylinder to be on the center with the cylinder below it, I simply duplicated it and moved it straight upwards. However, it turns out that there is no way to scale all the sides of a shape evenly at the same time. Instead, one of the two ways I found is you have to do that thing when you crop an image where you make one corner smaller and it moves off center, so then you have to recenter the whole thing to where it originally was. Did that make any sense? I hope it did. Anyway, yeah, this is a problem that came up a lot in this project. I'm starting to like this program more than the last because, as it turns out, you actually have the luxury of being able to choose between the full spectrum of colors, which is apparently rare in this modern age. I made sure to keep both of the skinny parts at the top the same size, however, no guarantee that they're properly aligned. I tried to use this triangle as the belt connector, but I couldn't find a way to make it rounder. I don't know if rounder is a word, but you know what I mean. And I do not care enough to look it up. I just used a circle to give a similar vibe. I really like this one, but the knowledge that none of the cylinders are perfectly aligned will haunt me for the rest of my days. When I downloaded this next 3D software, Windows gave me a warning that it protected my PC, but it was probably a false positive. Hopefully. So I clicked the run anyway thing and braced myself. I mean, the website doesn't really comfort me very much, to be honest. When I opened it, all I saw was this main window. I tried doing random stuff and going into every menu to see if anything would work, but I couldn't figure anything out. I had to look up a tutorial and finally found out how to add basic shapes. Oh, also, the camera was tilted at a strange angle from the moment I launched Seamless 3D, and I couldn't figure out how to fix it, so I just accepted it as my fate. I wasn't entirely sure how to model the shapes, but I guess I had to get a little abstract. I just kind of stacked a couple cubes, put whatever these things are on the side, stacked some more cubes and half cubes and alternating patterns, giving, I guess, the notion of what the lightsaber actually looks like. I found these thin pole things, just kind of slapped them up there. I tried putting these particles on the very top to look like the lightsaber blade, but unfortunately, it sent the entire rest of the model to the shadow realm, so I had to get rid of those. So in the end, it definitely turned out. Shaper 3D gives you an interactive tutorial when you first load it up, like a video game, which is pretty cool and actually helps with the very basics. Shaper 3D is probably the most satisfying piece of software I used for this video. It is also the laggiest piece of software I used for this video. I don't think it was my PC. I can run decently large Blender projects fine. Maybe the software just isn't very optimized. Weird. But anyway, I had a relatively good time modeling this, even if half of the experience was at a solid 8 frames a second. This was also my first actual full model in a CAD style software. I've tried one or two others in the past, but never actually made anything. My modeling wasn't super detailed and definitely not precise. I don't think you'll be printing this in 3D with much success at all. Or maybe you will, I don't know how 3D printing works. I didn't spend enough time in Shaper to get overly familiar with it, but it was relatively intuitive. It also has this page where you can drag and drop textures directly onto your object, Substance Painter style. But it, didn't work for me. It looked like something was terribly wrong with the texture mapping, and I didn't know how to fix it. So I just went with a clay style, aka nothing, which is actually better if you don't think about it. So, which is your favorite lightsaber? Vote now in the comments. Actually, it doesn't matter. They're all equally as good. They all get to be president, or I don't know, what was this for again?